welcome to Beyond the Pour, crafted by California Tastings. I'm Nilu, your sommelier host, uncorking stories by visionary sommeliers, winemakers, chefs, and mixologists shaping our world. I'm excited to welcome Laurel Livezey, the wine director at Little Saint in Healdsburg, Sonoma County in Northern California. Hello, Laurel. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you? Of
Thank you for making a little time for me today.
course.
Laurel, super excited about your background, and I wanted to just, the whole point of Beyond the Pour is to talk about sommeliers, winemakers, and chefs, bartenders, people in the industry, hospitality industry. And you have such a great background, great story. So, we want to learn from you. So that's the reason we're going to talk a little bit about some fun things. So you basically started your hospitality career as a barista in Mendocino,
Mhm.
and then you transitioned to wine in New York. And I believe you went to New York to study theater or dance. And then you finally ended up at Union Square Hospitality Group, which is a fantastic spot to end up. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about the background, the transition, how you got into wine, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah. I started as a barista. I was a senior in high school. I needed a job, and there was a coffee bar in Mendocino, which no longer exists, called Moody's, and they were doing classic traditional Italian espresso. And so that's where I learned that. And at the same time, I got a restaurant job as a busser. And so it was kind of like deep dive into hospitality as a teenager. And then coffee really took me through college. I went to Southern Oregon University for theater and then into summer stock up in Washington. And then when I moved to New York, I really continued in coffee because that's what I had job experience doing. And then when I moved to New York, I discovered this cafe was opening, and I had never heard of Union Square Hospitality Group, but it was this Roman style espresso bar, which was very much my background, and I got really excited about it. And that's when I kind of learned who Danny Meyer is and what that whole company's philosophy is about. And they really are very specific about their hiring process and about who they look for their team, and really saw a lot in me pretty much right out of the gate. I went to an open call, and they passed me up the chain pretty quickly and actually hired me at a higher level position than entry, which they don't normally do. And then really mentored me through that process. We opened the cafe. They were like, "Hey, we think you're overqualified now. It's more food focused. Can we move you to the wine bar we're opening across the hall?" And so that's when I started learning about Italian wine and cocktails and grower champagne, and really started doing a lot more wine focused service. But it actually really wasn't until I was trying to find a gift for my parents for Christmas one year. I was going home for Christmas, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to get my parents. But I remembered we had gone to Lake Como when I was in high school, and my dad had this wine that he couldn't really remember what it was other than it was called Inferno. And he like couldn't stop talking about it for years. So I decided that I was going to use my team of Italian focused sommeliers that I had at Marta in the same building and try to figure out what that wine was and get it for them for Christmas. And that was the deep dive for me. I started researching Valtellina and Valtellina Superiore and Lombardia and 𝗕𝐿𝐼 and all of those Nebbiolo, regional Nebbiolo from Valtellina. And I think it was probably 6 hours I spent researching before I realized that time had passed because it was so fascinating to me. And I've always loved storytelling. My background's in theater and history, and classical theater was a lot of my training. So it was storytelling, it was history, it was science, it was, puzzles all wrapped up into one thing. And that was when I decided I think I needed to do this. So
That was the turning point for you. So we should really thank your dad. I
yeah,
mean,
we should.
without Inferno, where would this whole thing have gone? I
Thank him
love
for
that
never changing
story.
profile picture on Facebook either, because that's how I could see some of the bottle.
I love that. I love that. So of course, Italy, what a place, right? So many options, so much learning. It's incredible. And it helps when you hopefully, I'm sure you've done this, but when you travel to these spots, it's like, oh wow, this now makes total sense. And books are great, but then when you're there, it's something else. And so, Little Saints, the place that you are the wine director at in Healdsburg, is 100% vegan, the menu, correct? And so in Sonoma County, you don't see that very often unless I don't know about it. Maybe there's a couple of spots. What kind of clients are drawn to this plant-based experience, and how do they differ from the typical wine country visitor?
Um, that's a difficult question to answer just because a lot of our clients and our guests find out that we're plant-based after the fact. So we're really not, I mean, oh, yes, we have our guests that seek us out because they're vegan and that's what we do. But the number of people we have just walking in, checking the place out, sitting down and having a meal, and then finding out later that it was all plant-based is really high. And those are actually some of, I think, not to, I mean, I love all of our guests, but some of our favorite guests are the ones that really don't know what we do until after they've experienced it and then are blown away by it. Um, I mean, we have so much else going on too. We're a music venue. We have a big wine program, obviously. We have an incredible bar and cocktail program. We have private events. We do public events. So it's people hear about us in a lot of different ways. Um, and just one piece of that is our mission of being vegan and plant-based. And I think we get a number of people that are seeking that out and also an equal number of people that are coming for other reasons. Um, yeah, if that
I
answers your.
That answers everything, and that's really what I was wanting to know. Like, are are the people coming in specifically like, oh, we only eat vegan, we don't eat anything else, or are they just coming in and they're like, okay, cool restaurant, cool vibe, let's try some different things. And I'll tell you, I've eaten there, and gosh, I was blown away with I eat meat, I eat all that stuff, but absolutely blown away. So I think the food speaks for itself, the vibe speaks for itself. It's very cool. And you're doing different things with wine, obviously, that not a lot of people are doing. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But here's a question. We're talking more about the industry right now, trying to find out what's going on with the wine world. How do you see consumers' taste shifting right now? Do you see something changing?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple, I'm seeing a lot of things happening at once. And I think the first thing I'm seeing is a lot more interest in non-alcoholic and low ABV options, which we have an entire shelf on our wall that is non-alcoholic. We always have something on offer on our menu, whether it's cocktails or a non-alcoholic wine option. That's a really big shift that we've seen recently. I have also seen a move away from some of the like bigger red Napa cabs that seemingly dominated for a while. Um, I know that we've seen in the past sort of what we've called an anything but Chardonnay movement, and that still
Hmm.
prevails a little bit, but I actually had a stint of about 6 months where the Chardonnay on our By the Glass list was our top seller. So I think we're seeing a little bit more of an adventurous palette in guests. Um, I heard a really great quote, and I can't remember for the life of me where I heard it, but it was consumers it's not that they're not spending money, it's that they're spending money very carefully and intentionally. And that's, I think, what we're seeing is people aren't really just, they're not spending a lot of money on wine for the heck of it. They're actually very cautious about what they're trying. So they're really relying on us to guide them based on what they like or don't like. So we're seeing actually quite a bit more adventurous drinkers. And one of the things that's really great about Little Saint is we're pretty uniquely situated both geographically and what we're doing in wine country. We have a lot of industry guests as well. So for me, I almost am I wouldn't say at a disadvantage because I'm serving a lot of folks who are in the wine industry, but I'm seeing a little bit more of, I think, an adventurous group with by nature than I am of quote unquote your classic consumer. So we get a lot of demand for Sonoma Pinot. Local wines are huge. Our entire By the Glass list right now is domestic for a reason. I want to support the smaller domestic producers that maybe don't have a chance to be featured. But we have an incredible selection of imports as well. So I'd say a lean more towards low ABV and non-alcoholic and a little bit more adventurous, but specific and intentional with spending money. That's how I've
That's
seen.
so great. This is a conversation I want to have with anybody in the wine industry right now because it is definitely different right now. And I think you talked about the correct thing completely. People are still spending money, but they're like, I really want to know what I'm drinking when I'm drinking. So, help me kind of thing. And you're doing that through stories, you're doing that through guiding them and that kind of thing. So that's awesome. Hopefully we'll get more um, information as we're talking to different guests through this podcast. Now, sustainability is a growing conversation in wine.
Mhm.
What changes or challenges do you see around this in your corner of the industry?
Oh, I mean, I think sustainability has become, unfortunately and unfortunately, a pretty major buzzword. Um, I think it can mean different things to different people. I think sustainability right now is almost like a baseline for a lot of people, a baseline requirement, I should say,
Mm,
um, as it is for us. But I think it's really hard to know what that means as a consumer. There are different levels of sustainability. So I think I'm really happy that that's a focus. I think that's a really, really great move in the right direction for intentional
hmm.
farming, intentional
Yeah.
lessening impact on the environment, et cetera. But I would love to see even more transparency with it. And I think that's something, rather than it just being a marketing tool, which, I say that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but like
Hmm.
I would love to see, what does sustainability mean to each producer? What are those steps being taken? I've heard the term greenwashing a lot, and I want to make sure that consumers are still able to make informed choices when it comes to the wines.
Hmm.
They're being intentional with their money, not just with their money, but also what they're putting in their body. And those smaller handcrafted, organic, biodynamic, certified sustainable, those are products that people are wanting because they're wanting to be more intentional about
Right.
what they're consuming. So I think sustainability in general is great. I would love to see even more effort to defining that and giving consumers the information.
And that word sustainable, sustainable is used so much now, like you said, but then there's all these little categories, whether it's biodynamic, organic, like you said, greenwash, whatever. Are people really understanding the differences or vegan wine, right? I mean, that's a whole unfiltered, not using anything that could disrupt that. So there's a lot, people don't know, but they know that word, so they're asking for it. So it's a great conversation piece right now.
That's kind of what we saw with natural wine too, which I think the natural wine movement is maybe tapering a little bit, but I think natural wine to a lot of consumers meant really unfiltered sediment, almost like skin contact orange wine, really this kind of funk that they were looking for, where when people come into Little Saint, they ask if we have natural wine. I pretty much point them in the direction of our entire program because
Right.
that natural spectrum is what we're going for. That's that as unfined, unfiltered as we can get, lessening impact on the environment, small production, handcrafted. We're not looking for things that are a mass-produced commodity product. We're looking
Hmm.
for things that are crafted, that are
Hmm.
giving what the vintage wants or what the winemaker wants to express from those grapes. Um, and I think the other big part of sustainability for me on that same note is not just the farming or the product itself, but how the producer is embodying sustainability in their entire business model, taking care of
Right.
their people, looking at their water usage, looking at their energy usage. And so I'm really passionate about seeking out producers that are looking at all aspects of sustainability because it's not just about, I mean, the soil is huge, but it's also about everything else. It's an ecosystem that we have to pay attention
Yeah,
to. So
I
that's
love it. So natural wine is here to stay, or I mean,
I
when we say natural wine, again, so much to talk about, but the
So
unfiltered, the cleaner style.
I mean, I like to
It's a
say
good thing.
yes.
Yeah.
I think natural wine
Yeah.
is really just it is talking about going back to a little bit more of that. I think about the vigneron, the that
Yeah.
concept of really just what the season gives is what we take and express.
Yeah.
And we're not manipulating it to be anything else than what it wants to
Right.
be. And to me, like that's my broad natural wine definition
Yeah.
as I look at it.
I love that. And I think that, in this day and age, everybody's trying to feel healthier, look better, stay away from anything that's bad for you. So why should wine be different? Why should the beverages that we consume be different? It makes sense to go with a better natural process, hopefully, and find out what's in there. That's really interesting. So if you could, here's a fun question. I always think my questions are fun. If you could pair a wine with a song that represents the vibe of Little Saint, what would it be and why?
Oh man, there are so many options there. I think I'd have to go with something sparkling.
Okay.
Um, I am thinking I'd have to go with grower champagne. And the reason for that is the vibe at Little Saint is serious, but uplifted. We
Yep.
have music, there's a lot going on. And I think
Yeah.
one of the things about grower champagne, and I think grower champagne with some age on it in
Mm-hmm.
particular, have
Mm-hmm.
complexity, but it feels celebratory. But it can be a serious food wine, but it can also
Mm-hmm.
stand on its own. And I think that's Little Saint is so dynamic in that sense. Just if it's a concert night, we have live music upstairs, or we're doing a collaboration pop-up prefix multi-course dinner with a famous chef, or we're doing a wine dinner, or we're doing insert event here. There's we're always Little Saint. There's always that vibe. And if any of you who are listening have ever been into Little Saint, you'll know what I'm talking about. It's very whimsical, but there is this core of seriousness, especially the commitment to our mission and the commitment to what we're doing is always there, but we have a
Mm.
lot of fun with it. And I
I
think
love it.
that is
Yeah.
champagne to me.
Yeah, in Champagne, God, for anything fun, you got to throw that in there.
Absolutely.
Anything exciting, why not? It's one of my favorite things to drink.
And
I love
any
that answer. Yeah.
too. I mean, vegan food is a challenge sometimes to pair wine with, and
Yeah.
champagne being one of the most food-friendly wines is always something I keep in my back pocket for
Right, right. Do you use sake a lot right now? Because that's a trend right now. I feel like is really, and I love sake. So I started off really disliking it, but the last 2, 3 years I've really thrown myself in there. So many styles, so many cool things you can do with it. Are you using that to pair with vegan food?
we are, yeah. I just beefed up our sake program a little bit. It's probably not
Yeah.
the word I should use for a little sake. But
Beefed up? No.
um, I just increased our sake inventory. We did a pop-up
Yeah.
with a restaurant down in LA, 𝗕𝗄𝐿 with Chef Pearl Steffi, which is a vegan
Oh,
omakase.
nice.
So we did a lot of sake pairing in that, but it's
Yeah.
been fun for me to deep dive a little bit into that world as well and just
Yeah.
see how those not only with flavors, but and flavor and texture, but temperature is a really big
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
How even just bringing that temperature up a little bit can make it pair differently. Chilling it down can go with something else. It's really fascinating. So I've had
Yeah.
the good fortune to do some tastings with some serious sake experts recently and learn more from them, which is and that's I'm just starting that journey. So
Yeah.
you'll see
Yeah.
more sake incorporated at Little Saint soon.
Whenever you've got one of those deals going on, let me know. I'm very much wanting to learn more. So I think that's super, super cool. How do you think technology, AI, digital retail, etc., is influencing wine buying, wine selling, or even the drinking culture at this moment?
Um, that's hard for me to answer because I'm not I'm not relying so much on AI because I have my training and my studies and my background, but
Hmm.
I was seeing it a lot. I've been seeing it a lot for a while when Vivino became a thing. What we saw were people using their Vivino app or taking pictures of a wine list rather than asking the sommelier or the server on the floor. And I think on the one hand, it is helping consumers take their wine knowledge into their own hands. On the other hand, it can be alienating if you have a staff that is there to help and assist with wine
Yeah.
purchases. But I think it could perpetuate this stereotype of sommeliers being almost like used car salesmen. Like we're not trying to push the big sale on you for the big sale's sake. My
Mhm.
team is not working on commission, right?
Right.
We want you to have the best experience possible. And if that means a more affordable price point, then that's what we're going to do. And I think
Mhm.
AI also is not perfect. It doesn't know everything. I have played around with it a little bit just to see what it'll
Mhm.
give me when I ask. And
Yeah.
it's still fairly basic. It doesn't get into some of the unexplored corners of the wine world yet. There are things that I would think of for a pairing that it never has
Right.
come up with yet. So I
Yeah.
think it's still a ways away, and I'm hoping it stays that
I
way.
hope it stays that
Um,
way because I mean, when the human touch is gone, isn't the whole experience about, the way that we interact with each other and it's not robotic, hopefully.
no, it's
Um, you know,
hospitality human. That's
yeah, yeah. Now we'll have you back in 6 months. We need to keep researching this because it's crazy what's happening with this kind of AI. Um,
I will say there is one thing I would love to see, and it's not AI, but it is
mhm,
technology to create a network of sommeliers from all over the world. I really do think that one of the things that I would like to see more of is
mhm,
some sort of tasting database. At least so a little back in my studies, a lot of the tasting notes that we were given as options or that were being used were very Western and very European centric, very like I said, Western culture. And
yeah,
I am not seeing a whole lot of diversity when it comes to tasting notes. Because there might be somebody that I'm speaking to that grew up in a place where apples don't grow. They don't
right.
know necessarily what an apple tastes like or smells like, but they do know something else that is more appropriate to their regional cuisine, their regional culture. I want to know what that is, whether I understand what that flavor and that scent is that doesn't matter. But if that's what it means to you, I always tell my team whenever they're tasting that whatever you're smelling is correct. I'm not
Yeah,
going to tell you that you're not smelling what you're smelling because I don't have your sense memory. I
yeah,
would bring up huckleberry when I was tasting in New York City, and a lot of my East Coast friends were like, I don't know what that is. And I'm like, oh,
right.
so I would
And
love to see sommeliers with different backgrounds from around the world come together and almost create a tasting note network that can be something that is utilized for consumers to have a frame of reference that
yeah,
if that makes
yeah,
sense.
and we should say you are a WSET 3. So this is a big deal. That's not an easy thing to get to. And I love the idea. Maybe Gilsom can put something together. That would be, I think, the place for where everybody kind of goes and figures out. But it really is about what have you grown up with? What aromas have you in your mom's kitchen or around you? What country did you live in? So that is going to make a big difference. I guess that's where we get excited about the pairings because we're like, please tell me what to do, how to do it, that kind of thing.
That's why I love living with a partner who doesn't have a background in wine. He was not a wine drinker when we
Yeah,
met. He'll put his nose in something. He has no fear too. I've
yeah.
admired him so much, but he'll put his nose in something and say, "Oh, that smells like, bananas
Right?
and a green potato." And I'm like, "What?" And then I put my nose in it and I'm like, "Oh my God, you're right." But I would have never come
Yeah,
up with that. He's just
yeah,
like, That's what I smell." So
yeah,
it's really refreshing to have someone who for lack of a better phrase, doesn't have a trained palate because
yeah.
it's a little clear to come up with what he's actually experiencing. And I
That's a
think
great second. Yeah, you just have to basically take him into work with you, right?
be my second nose, please.
Your second. Can I borrow your nose for a second? Hey, if you could share a bottle with anyone, I love this question. living or dead? All these questions make you think a little bit.
Yeah.
Who would it be and what would you pour? Anybody in the world.
I'm sure I'm going to come up with so many more answers to this once we end this, but I have two that come to mind right now. The first one, I would really love to share some Madeira with Shakespeare because he's
Oh,
at
yeah.
it in his plays. I mean, in Richard III. So my background is also in classical theater and Shakespeare, which is why this comes to mind.
Yeah.
In Richard III, they end up drowning Clarence, Richard's brother, in a butt of 𝗕𝐿𝐼𝐍, which is a barrel of Madeira, which also not a bad way to go, but kind of a bad like So there he's written about Madeira in his plays. I would love to just experience what that was for him back in his time.
Yeah.
So that would be number one. And then my second one, and anyone who knows me listening to this will either roll their eyes or expect this answer, but I would love to sit down with Stevie Nicks and have anything that she wants to drink with
Yeah,
me.
you're like, just order for me. It doesn't matter.
Exactly. I will do it.
Oh, I
I
love that.
love her. I've seen her twice in concert in the
Yeah.
last year or
Yeah.
so, but
Yeah.
I really
Oh,
just I want to hear her story. So
let's see if we can get her on the podcast. Wouldn't that be cool? My God. So if you know anybody that knows Stevie Nicks, we
right.
would love to have her on the podcast.
Maybe come do a
Um,
chocolate little saint afterwards.
yeah, she can come as long as I'm included. That would be super, super fun. My God. I'll tell you something about Fleetwood Mac. Anytime I'm in the kitchen cooking, like not anytime, it's like when I've got friends coming over and I pour myself a glass of wine, usually red, usually a cab, or Malbec or something, and my speaker in there, I turn on Fleetwood Mac. And that is my to-go cooking. I don't know what it is, but it just calms me down, makes me do my thing. It's, oh my God, it's so freaking cool. Love them, love them. Yes, it's fixed too. Yeah, of course. Um, where do you see the wine world heading in the next 5 years? Obviously, at this moment, we're like every 6 months, let's look and see what's going on. But what do you think 5 years from now it would look like?
Okay, I this is something I want to answer, but I don't. I'm wanting to answer from a place of hope rather
Yeah. Right.
than
Can
cynicism.
we just put our hands together?
Yeah, so here's my hope for the wine industry in the next 5 years. I am hoping that the trend of consumers spending money more intentionally moves into spending money intentionally for producers that they are passionate about, that they believe in. Um, and we see a lot more of the smaller producers succeeding and surviving, and we see a little bit more of a downgrade of wine production, if that makes sense. Upgrade,
Yes.
downsizing. Let's I want to upgrade, but downsize. That's
Yeah, yeah.
I think one of the things that I have heard, I mean, we have a lot of grapes going unsold in recent vintages. Um, we have an overproduction, I think, especially in this country, not so much in the world of wine, but at least in
Yeah.
the US. And that's really my focus right now as I'm talking
Yeah.
about what I see in the United States here is I would love to see a little more intentional, smaller production. Um, with more care to handcrafted and
Yeah.
less of an impact on the environment and farming. I would love to see, and I don't, I hope I'm not shunned for this. I would love to see some vineyards that maybe aren't doing as well, or some vineyards that don't need to be there pulled out and replaced with some regenerative produce and food farms. I would love
Nice.
to see a lot more focus on local food and local I would love to see some reforestation. I would love to see some building of ecosystems in place of vineyards that are where the grapes are going unsold anyway. I almost
Yeah.
think of it and use that land in a different way and
Yeah.
focus on a little bit more of a smaller, more intentional production. I think food is really a big problem that a lot of people don't realize. The quality of our food is not great. This is a whole other conversation that
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
have.
yeah. I love that.
Um,
That's such an important conversation to have for sure. And the quality's not good. Too many pesticides, too many this, too many that. And I think people are starting to panic a little bit. And you're right. Um, I mean, if someone was asking me this question, I would definitely agree with what you said. And and
Well,
and focus on, clean farming and even if it's, you know, it's not going to stay as long. It's not going to be basically something you can leave in the store that long. But what if we get it out to communities faster, but it's clean, it's fresh. So true. So
well,
important
that's
right now.
what we're doing at Little Saint too, is
Yeah.
we have an 8 acre farm where the majority of our
Oh,
ingredients comes from. It's less
oh,
than 10 minutes from the restaurant. They're doing floral, they're doing produce that they're growing for the kitchen. Um, and they built that farm on an old plot that used to be a vineyard. And so I would love to see more of that. And I would love to see, in 5 years, I'd love to see more focus on local, clean, organic, high nutritious food and wine being part of the food experience
yeah,
more.
yeah. I think that's so such a good vision. I do hope people listen to this. Um, I want to ask you, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
Um,
Can you think of that? I mean, there's always a moment where you meet someone that if you're anything like me, that you're thinking, damn, as life goes on, that sentence meant so much, and I didn't realize how much it meant. Has there been any advice like that for you?
yeah, it really was advice I was given when I took over this role as a wine buyer, a wine director. But the longer I've sat with it, it really has become such an incredible piece of life advice. And that's get really good at saying no. And that's something that
Right.
I've never been very good at. I've always thought that saying yes meant that I was more pleasing.
Accommodating. Yeah.
Accommodating, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know what I found, not just in saying no, I mean, it was really on a level of, I can't say yes to every wine that wants to have a place on our shelf, but on a much broader scale, saying no is setting boundaries. Saying no is
Yeah.
making it clear and keeping is managing expectations. And there's something so much better for the people around you by just saying, no, I don't have the capacity for this, and that's that, rather than trying to make something happen and not making it happen well. You
Yeah.
disappoint people further by saying yes to something you really can't deliver on than just by saying no. And I think
Yeah.
that's the best piece of advice I've ever gotten. Thank you, 𝗕𝐿𝐿𝐿, for that. Was just to
Yeah.
get really good at saying no. And I would give that advice to anybody, no matter what industry or what stage in life you're in. Just get really skilled at saying no.
It's interesting how difficult that word is.
Mhm.
When it comes to business, that you can pull off most things and you can get it done, but is that quality going to be the same? Is it going to come across the way you want it to? And really picking and choosing, delivering the right thing is absolute key. When I started California Tastings, that this 4.5 years ago, and every call I got, every email I got, I was like, yeah, of course, yeah, we'll make it work, no problem. Like only in the last 2 years have I said no. And this is not going to fit into what you're asking, what we can do for you. And it took me a long, long time to get to that point. And so, very good point on learning, your worth, learning, no, I'm not going to be able to do this. So, um, it's a difficult word. First, the
Yeah.
last question I've got for you is if you could give one piece of information, one piece of advice, I should say, to a young aspiring sommelier, somebody who wants to work their way up or get into the same kind of line of business that you're doing, becoming a wine buyer, wine director, how would they do that? What would you say?
I've given this advice recently, actually. I would say find a restaurant where you're passionate about the wine program that they
Mhm.
have. Start on the ground floor as a server or on the service team and learn everything you can about their wine program, but about service. Because one of the things that I've learned as a sommelier and even as a wine director is I spend equal time on the floor assisting the service team, running food, bussing, talking to guests, seating guests as a host, as I do actually selling wine.
Right.
So, so if the only thing that you feel is worthy of your time is selling wine, work in a retail shop.
Yeah.
If you want to be in a restaurant setting and be a sommelier, you have to understand that, and you have to enjoy every aspect of the service experience. I love being a server, and that's something that I get a lot of joy from. If I didn't, I don't think I would be as successful as a sommelier because for me, yes, selling the wine and talking about it, I could talk about it forever, but it's about the guest experience, and wine is only a part of that. So I think my best piece of advice would be to learn every aspect of service in the restaurant, even back of house. Get some experience working in the kitchen on the culinary side as well. It gives you a much deeper appreciation for food and wine pairing and for aroma and for the craft that goes into that. Um, I think just being a sommelier means being a service team member and being one that can do everything because so often you have to step in and help when there isn't an active wine sale happening.
Yeah.
Um, if that makes sense.
I love all of that. And it really is, it's such a difficult job. And you do it beautifully. So we love talking to you today. Thank you, Laurel, for joining us on Beyond the Pour. So much to learn. I'm so excited to have this up and live in a couple of weeks so we can
Perfect.
hear your voice. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Nilu. You have a good one.
Thanks. Bye.